we're gonna get into our top five hip hop albums of 2021. Um, is there any other business that comes up before that? Okay, you know what? Let's just get into it, and I think that's gonna spawn some of the other discussions. Do you want to start from five to one, or we're gonna just kill the suspense? Because I think a lot of people are already kind of
Yeah, we might as well go from. I think no, because I think by the time we get to like three, if the album's not named, yeah, we can start at one
okay.
actually.
We'll start at one. What is your one for album of the year?
It's King's Disease 2 by Nas.
King's Disease 2 by Nas. I'm gonna have to agree with you. It was actually number one on mine too. Just to make sure I wasn't tripping, I put King's Disease 2 on today and just let it ride. And it actually sounds better now than it did when I first played it. Nas, again, like, not to be redundant, but just like what we said in the beginning when it came out, or months ago when it came out, in our broadcast immediately after, he sounds extremely comfortable. Hit Boy did an incredible job. I think, in my opinion, best job I've heard him do producing a full effort, especially with everything considered, working with someone who people deem as a bad beat picker, and we did say we were going to talk about that too. And yeah, I just love the album from beginning to end. I know Terminator 2 is going to probably crack up when I say this, but the lowest point of that album was Eminem's verse on EPMD 2. But other than that, I mean, this album is damn near flawless. I mean, and obviously, we're not talking about flawless in the sense of like we're hearing Nas from It Was Written, Illmatic, or whatever. He's not that MC anymore. That's fine. It's kind of like it's like comparing Air Jordan, the guy with the 48-inch vertical, that's leaping over 7-footers, dunking on 7-footers, averaging 37 a game, to the Jordan on the Wizards. And the Jordan on the Wizards gets a bad rap, but Jordan on the Wizards was dope as hell. He changed positions. He was a small forward now. He was playing big. He was playing with his back to the basket. He was more of a rebounder and defender, and he adjusted his game to, if he could have been in any system that was contending, that would have been a big difference. Saying all that to say, the comfortability that Nas has in his skin at this stage in his career is very special. He's not trying to fit in, and I think he knocked this one out the park with KD2.
I'm going to agree with a lot of those sentiments. So let's stay with that Jordan with the Wizards sentiment, and
Yeah.
specifically to a strong point that you made. First of all, Jordan with the Wizards, I think a lot of people forget. Oh, he took some more time off before he came back.
Yeah.
Didn't he take like 2 or 3 years off?
Yeah, it was from 98 to like '02.
2001.
Yeah, '01. Yeah.
Oh, right. It's like, so he took 3 years off, came back, and averaged 20 points for a dysfunctional, not too talented team.
That he was the GM of.
Well, that was part of the reason why the team wasn't too talented. That's a whole nother conversation for another day. But you know what Nas did that MJ didn't do? Oh, well, he got in the right system. That's why this whole Hit Boy thing. I mean, this Hit Boy thing is kind of going understated for how important this is, because this isn't like MJ with the Wizards. This is like, imagine that guy that could take 3 years off and still go get you like 20 to 22 points a night and get you like 6 rebounds and 6 assists. Like, imagine that guy that would have been playing for one of those contending teams at the time. Like, let's say, for instance, how about this, Mike? You take Scottie Pippen out of that Portland team in 2000 when the Lakers beat them in that Game 7, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you take, isn't that 2000 or is that 2001?
No, that was 2000. That was 2000 because that was the Lakers' first championship.
So put Mike on that Portland team.
Come
2 years
man.
off of basketball, they win the championship.
Come on. I mean, not even close. We talking about that whole meltdown that happened in the fourth quarter in Portland would have never, ever taken place.
So this is like MJ not going to the Wizards. This is him going somewhere like Portland or Houston.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's what like KD2 is. You know what I'm saying? And it's like no, and you can see it's like no, this dude can really really hoop, and he still has those moments on this album. Like to keep the MJ thing going, where it's like, no, he goes and gets you 35 on some of these records. Like Death Row East, no, that's 35, 40. You know what I'm saying? Store
Yeah.
Run, Nobody. Yeah.
Well, I mean, people are saying this is more like LeBron. They don't like my Jordan Wizards comparison, but the reason why I'm comparing that is because Jordan changed whole positions. Like, you know what I mean? Like, people
Well,
can
but you
say
can't.
LeBron is a point guard, but he's not really. He's not out here guarding the point guards or anything like that. I mean,
Well,
the
what about the
player
game?
that there's like what 4 different phases of Jordan as a player. Like you got Air Jordan, which again I think a lot of people forget about when they talk about the athleticism, possibly the most athletic basketball player to ever play the game. And then you got the Jordan that came back from baseball, where he bulked up and he had a lot of upper body strength. Well, no, hold on, I skipped one. You got the Jordan who bulked up for Detroit, who still, wasn't like super upper body strength, but he was stronger now and he was able to rely on a bit of a jump shot. And then you got the one that retired, came back and was in baseball shape, and now he has a lot of upper body and is really playing with his back to the basket. He can still leap, but he's not 48-inch vertical. But you're talking about the other one that came back after another break and went to the Wizards and now is a small forward. And if you watch those games, and you seen that block that he did where he blocked dude's layup and hit it to the backboard. That's
Yeah.
him playing big.
I haven't seen it, but I remember when that happened.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So it's like, and I say that in relation to Nas because I'm listening to the King's Disease 2 album, and he's super dope on there. You know what I mean? But he's not Silent Murder dope. And that's fine. You know what I'm saying? He's able to make it work. And I think that's the remarkable part of it.
So, I told you, so one of the most striking things about KD2 for me is that, like, I hope you understand how truly great this guy was on Illmatic and on It Was Written and on Stillmatic and, like, the Lost Tape. Like as an MC, Mike, because it's like, that's the only thing that's keeping this album from being a blistering classic is the fact that we know that guy existed and lived. So it's like, no, the guy that wrote I Gave You Power or Take It in Blood or Silent Murder or The World Is Yours, no, he's not that guy. Nobody's that guy. But he still has moments where it's like, oh, that guy is still alive. He still just like Jordan did with the Wizards. It's like Jordan didn't go get 20 points every night. Mike had nights where he went and got 37, 38 points that night. That's what King's Disease 2 is. It's like, no, he's going on some runs on here.
Oh yeah, he is. He's super dope on there. And EPMD 2, he killed that joint. You know what I mean? And like we were talking about offline, because I know a lot of people are sitting here saying that I'm tripping about the Eminem thing. But Eminem's verse on it was trash. Nas's verse was dope.
No, we are not making this about Eminem.
No, we're not going to make this about Eminem. But I'm just saying, if it would have been the other way around, people would have been like, yo, Eminem killed Nas on the record. I saw in that group that we're in, you and I are in, somebody posted dead wrong and talking about Eminem smashed Biggie on there. And it's like, dude, you have to understand. The Eminem laid verses down that were over a track that contained 2 Biggie verses that didn't make it on any Biggie album and that were pre-ready to die. And the man was gone. What are we talking about here? You know what I'm saying? Like, why is that even a conversation? Like Jada said, man, made real songs with Biggs, no made up shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, that, no, like I don't even, but see, again, I'm just saying, that's bottom feeder stuff, and that's how people will spin when Eminem's on the record with you. But when Nas does his thing on the record and Eminem's trash, we're not supposed to talk about it?
So, Mike, this is what I mean. Okay, so understand how polarizing Eminem is. Lyrically, Mike, if you go listen to Nas's verse on there, It's actually one of the best moments on an album where he's as lyrically as sharp as he's been in about 20 years. But people are so concerned with Eminem being on there. You're missing the fact. Did you not just hear Nas go crazy on the song?
Yeah.
And this is, and Mike, and EPMD2 is probably the weakest song on there. And that's why I'm like, well, it's like, well, if that's the weakest song, and Nas sounds like that, and he has EPMD on there, and we're arguing about the Eminem verse back and forth in terms of some people saying it's trash, some people saying it's a smash. It's like, no, that's not just album of the year shit, Mike. That's like classic album shit. Because it's like he has classic albums where the weakest song on there, Mike, don't make me bring up Braveheart Party again. It's like that Stillmatic is still out there with Braveheart Party on there. EPMD2 isn't that.
I mean, listen, I agree with you 100%, but I think Eminem's verse is so trash on there. It unfortunately makes people not look. And this is the reason why, right? Nas's verse is so dope. This guy goes on for like, what is it, 32 bars? It's such a long trash verse, too. If it was short and trash, it would be cool. And I think we would highlight how dope Nas's verse is even more.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, Mike, I think at the beginning, doesn't Nas take like 8 bars and then he comes back after EPMD and does a 16?
Yeah.
I think M took the same bar time Nas did.
Nigga, it ain't your song.
I mean, you know.
It ain't. It's that 4, 3, 2, 1 cannabis shit. Come on now.
I'm just breaking down the logistics.
I'm sorry.
And it's big stuff when Nas calls you to be on an album because he's not a big, Mike, he's not a big guest appearance moments guy.
Who is
He's not, oh, let me bring this guy on my album to make a big moment. Like, Nas has never really been that guy. But this is one of the things, this is what I mean about playing with the right team. Well, if you notice, these last 2 projects, part of the reason why they sound current, part of the reason why they sound great, and this is probably the Hit-Boy influence and him being around, like, the younger generation, it's like he's letting Nas know, no, like, you're Nas. It's cool for you to do a record with anybody. Like, them doing the record with you is the thing.
You know what Quincy Jones would have done? And I get it. This is the only drawback of having somebody like a Hit-Boy producing somebody like a Nas and Eminem record. Quincy Jones would have cut this nigga's verse in half. He would have. Because really, man, sonically this just doesn't even make sense. And they let him go, and they let him continue to spit this BS verse because he's Eminem. And the song suffered from that, unfortunately. Same as why, you know, Jay let that trash-ass Renegade beat on the Blueprint, and the album suffers from that. Like, it just does. You want to sit there and let that pass? And you know what? Renegade, he made up for it with his bars. I'll really say the song that was on the Black album. You let that track on there, and their album suffers from it because you won't sit there and be honest with the fact that your shit's just not up to snuff because of who he is.
That's more valid than the Renegade comment. The what is it? Moment of Clarity.
Moment of Clarity. That track is trash.
Yeah, that beat has no place on that album at all because he picked mostly great beats. I feel
oh
yeah. That album.
Because he picked mostly great producers, and yeah.
So Mike, but this is what I mean, and it's like that's why I told you, Mike. But if you go pull up King's Disease and King's Disease 2, it's like, well, Hit-Boy and Nas are hitting more than they're missing, and if that's the miss, it's like they're hitting at a really, really high clip, and they're still giving you other moments like the joint with Lauryn Hill.
Oh, like, definitely, great feature.
The full circle joint with the Firm last year, Mike. It's like, no, Nas hasn't been known for having moments like this with other artists on his album. That's the Hit-Boy, like updating your formula, to speak, influence. And more often than not, it comes off well. If you want to call EPMD2 the low moment of this album, I'll agree with you. And I'll also tell you that's exactly why it's the album of the year, clearly, right now.
I agree with you. And I'm only bringing this up and dumping down on Eminem's verse because it's true, first of all. And 2, I think that Nas's verse on EPMD2 is actually a verse of the year candidate. It gets overlooked because of that shit. You know what I'm saying?
He had some verse of the year shit on there. That's one of them. Yeah.
It's one of his strongest individual verses on this really dope album.
Yes, Mike.
No,
correct.
I agree. And
we spend so much time talking about Eminem, we forget the fact that it's like, yo, did you just hear like Esco, like
Now I love YKTV too, and I was listening to that today. I was like, man, this song plays really well. Period. Like it just sounds like they having fun, man, and that's the kind of featured appearances, especially when you're talking about generational gap things. It didn't sound forced, and again, I'll give Hit Boy a lot of credit for that too. Making every artist that was on there feel comfortable and Nas adjusting to that zone. I think that was a really, really dope moment in the album too.
Well, this is why King's Disease 2 is better. Well, like I told you, like one was like a practice session. It's like, oh, they sounded comfortable together on the first one. They zoning out on this one, Mike. Like when I heard Brunch on Sunday and then Count Me In, I'm like, man, I was like, go ahead and wrap this shit up. I'm like, somebody got to do something great. I'm like, because he pretty much, because their chemistry is pretty much to the point. I mean, Mike, since we making NBA references, it was like on some Stockton and Malone shit. Definitely. Like at the point, it's like, oh, well, everything Hit Boy handing him right now, he's smashing. He can go do Brunch on Sunday. He can get back on his rap shit with Count Me In. And this is the back end of the album, Mike. This is after Store Run. This is after Moments. This is after Nobody. It just keep going. I'm like, oh, they zoned out.
Well, you know what? Since we got KD2 as album of the year, I want to ask you some more questions about the album. Specifically, like, what do you think is Hit Boy's best produced song on there?
It's Store Run, Mike.
Store Run? I was going to go Store Run, too. I like Nobody as well.
So Nobody's up there, too. But let's go to the Hit Boy interview and what he talked about. He's like, he's pretty much saying like that. He's like pretty much saying like Nas is a thoughtful dude. You got to give him room to breathe and talk his shit on the track. Like he pretty much said, it don't matter how dope a Nas beat is, because you ain't buying a Nas album to hear like dope beats. Like you buying the album to hear Nas. And so what he's actually done a great job of is, and this is from a modern day producer that's taught to do it big stadium style, he's actually toned it down and given Nas a soundscape to speak on.
Let me put your comment in context too for the people in the room who might not know. You're referring to the Hit Boy interview that he did with Mal and Rory, where I think it was Rory asked him about the notion that Nas is the worst beat picker. I think he was referring to Vlad or whatnot, because I don't think there's a lot of people who go out there on that, who sit on that soapbox, but. He asked Hit Boy about that, and that was his response, where he was talking about you gotta make beats around Nas's lyricism or soundscape. I do want to kind of stay on that for 1 second, and we'll get back to KD too. Go ahead. No, I don't want to interrupt your thought process either. Go ahead.
So let's stay there right quick. I've stated on this show, it's like, no, he's not picking bad beats. He's picking beats that don't fit what he does well. Those when the beats sound bad, like Mike, I'll give you a prime example. The Flyest with Nas and Pharrell. It's like, no, that beat is dope. That beat's not for Nas.
I was just about to say that. I was about to say, when people say this about Nas, I want them to actually start naming some songs with beats that they don't like.
They're talking about those records, because I hate to say it, Mike, when I listen to the Flyest, I'm like, no, that's for hoes.
Because when we talk about, Nas and him doing things that don't fit in what we like, You Owe Me always comes up, right? So do you think You Owe Me is a bad beat? Is that a bad Timbaland beat?
Mike, that's one of Timbaland's worst beats. That is a bad beat.
I didn't like the other one with Aaliyah, that You Won't See Me Tonight.
No, both of those, Mike. So when you're talking about bad beats, those are two bad beats. And it's crazy to say, those are like two of my least favorite Timbaland beats. And not because they didn't come off well with my favorite rap artists, because those beats really aren't that dope. It's like, that don't hit like Hey Poppy hits. This is around the same time. That shit don't knock like that.
What do you think Nas would have done with Hey Poppy, though? You think he would have...
But that's the thing. That's not for him. Timbaland and Pharrell, aesthetically, with what they do, really isn't for him. It doesn't fit. What they do well doesn't fit with what he does well. It's just big names coming together. It's all glitter. It's gold.
I used to knock Nas for that, though. I used to knock his versatility for that. And now, thinking back on it, I think that's more of a knock on the producer. It's the producer's job. And I got to give Hit Boy credit. He was able to do that. And he was able to do that without trying to recreate what Large Professor or DJ Premier or, you know what I'm saying, whoever did for Nas.
The most impressive thing is that he did it by his damn self.
He did. He
Like
did.
every time Nas has been all time great, it's been a collection of producers. Stillmatic, Illmatic. It was written, even though his track masters might. Havoc is still on there. LES is still on there. Primo's still on there. You feel
You
me?
know,
That's when the track
you
masters
listen.
get
I owe
the
Trackmasters an apology, man, because for years, I guess because coming off of Illmatic, I blame them for derailing, you know, Nas's career musically. And looking back on it, they made some really dope music for Nas, and I think they did a really decent job of adjusting to him and adjusting to the times.
So
Now,
here's
Nas is not gonna be LL Cool J on the Trackmasters record. And
no.
really, when you look at Trackmasters and what they made for Jay and what they made for Nas, I think they made better records for Nas.
Because they did.
Yeah.
I mean, Mike, this is what I'm saying. This is like the message ain't a bad beat.
No.
Shoot That ain't a bad beat.
No, it's not. Listen,
What
I like Street Dreams.
Mike, I mean, Street Dreams was dope. Like niggas
I
was
like the
about
remix too. They did the remix, right?
like the remix better than the original.
The
Truthfully.
remix is insane. He went nuts on there.
Even when people are like, some of the beats on it was written or whack, I'm like, no, like, you gotta let Nas spit. Like, Mike, Take It in Blood is a prime example of people thinking Nas is picking a bad beat. It's like, no, Nas needs a beat like that. That's a lot of loops and beat breaks and samples. He comes off well on there, and then you hear a spit game on there. It's like, that's why you picked that beat for Nas.
You know who I don't think is a great beat picker, and I love him as an artist, and we just did a little verses on it, but when you talk about him in relation to his contemporaries, I don't think T.I. is a great beat picker. I think that he has his moments. When him and Toop work together, it's magic. But him and the Neptunes just haven't been able to maximize on that potential of both of their individual skill sets. I think that bothers Pharrell. You know what I mean? Like, especially since he worked with T.I. from the jump. Yeah. And it's like, you don't agree with the fact that the Neptunes and T.I. haven't maximized on their individual potentials together?
I mean, when you say maximize, I think you want to hear something more epic from them in terms of what maybe Pharrell has done with Jay or done with Snoop, because T.I. is capable. But
not even not even that. Even if we're talking on a Pusha T level, even if we're talking on a Busta Rhymes level, like the things that they've made for damn near anybody, Mystical, Ludacris. They don't have a Southern hospitality together. They just don't, and they've tried a lot.
I mean, a lot of people like Pussy Papa #1 like that, Mike.
It's a good song, but it's not. I don't think that's a top Neptune
Mike,
anything.
No, it's not, Mike. I'm a big fan of Freak though, off Urban Legend. That's the Neptunes. That's Pharrell and T.I. I love that record, but
that might be their best collaboration.
That is their best collaboration.
Either that or Hear Ye. And I know that didn't really come out like that, but that was mostly about the verses on there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, the best collab to me is Freak though, off Urban Legend. And what I would say is I felt like they just probably needed to get in more of that groove. And, just like sometimes time doesn't permit it. Like, sometimes the game don't allow you to get into a groove with the artist. So let's go back, since we're still talking about our #1 allotment, which is KD2. Oh, Nas is a legend. Like, he got time to pull up on Hit-Boy and sit down for however long. He got the money, he got the time, he's already a legend in the game. Like, some of these cats don't have time and space to move like that, so you also got to look at where T.I. and Pharrell were in the game and how they were moving. So maybe we didn't get that moment because the time wasn't spent.
And that's interesting. When you got people in the prime of their careers, you want them to work together, but in the prime of your careers, that's when you have the least amount of time to actually be able to focus.
Right. Like, so let's go to something right quick. It's like, in tennis, Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal have been the two biggest, players in terms of wins and majors, and Djokovic too over the last 20 years.
Djokovic's been kicking their ass.
I mean, he hasn't been kicking their ass. I think it's been so long. Don't forget that they kicked his ass for the first about 5, 6, 7 years. So the last 5, 6, 7 years, he's just been returning the favor. And they all got about the same majors. You know what I'm saying? It is what it is. What I'm saying is that Nadal and Federer did an exhibition match where they played on grass on one side and clay on the other side. But they didn't do that until they were both injured and hurt
Yeah.
And their legacy, like Mike, this was about 4 or 5 years ago when it was like, oh, well, I don't know how many more these guys are going to win. They may have about 3 or 4 or 5 in them, and they've only won about 3 or 4 or 5. In their primes, you would have never gotten that exhibition match out of them. They
No.
wouldn't have had the time. They wouldn't have taken the time. It literally took them being old and being injured for them to do an exhibition.
That happens a lot in hip hop, and and I got to give credit to people like Redman and Method Man. We were able to see them actually come together and make a collaborative album, excuse me, at the prime and zenith of their abilities and careers. I mean, I wish we could have gotten an album from them in '96, but getting one in '99, 2000 wasn't bad either. You know what I mean?
Like you want to know a pairing that hasn't done a lot of work together that I love to hear, and you'll like it too when I say it because they're both so colorful and animated. I love it when Raekwon and Busta Rhymes get together, Mike.
Yeah.
Like every time I hear them get together, I'm like, damn, why didn't they do this sooner? You know, Ray's so colorful with the words, his voice is so clear and got the strong delivery. You already know what Busta's bringing. They sound great together.
Q-Tip and Busta too. And and while we're talking about Busta, I would have loved in the prime of what the Neptunes were doing, and maybe Busta around the 2000s, around the what it is right now era, if they could have done an album together. But yeah, I think that back to my point about Ti and the Neptunes, and Ti being an interesting beat picker. You hear about the beats that Ti passes up on, like Hustling from Rick Ross, and everything that's just been around him. It's like you would think that his production would be better in the abilities that he has. Like when you match him up with Game, I'm like, man, this is an excellent beat picker versus somebody who needs improvement in that department.
So that says a lot about who he is as an MC and the heights that he's reached, Mike. When you actually look at the beats that he's picked, and even some of the beats on some of his big singles, it's like Mike, when you go listen to the beats of even like Mike, what's happening? We love that record. That's not like some sort of awesome beat.
But people want to sit here and give Nas that label when this man has Made You Look in his arsenal. He has Nas Is Like in his arsenal. He has The World Is Yours in his arsenal. And you talking about he's the worst beat picker?
New York State of Mind.
What? Like I could pick 20 people I would consider worse beat pickers than this guy. Because if we're going to a cipher or something, and I got an artist whose whole catalog of instrumentals we could choose from, and I got Nas here, I'll take that. That's cool.
But let's talk about what they're really talking about. Nas doesn't pick beats that cats normally can just get in their whip and ride to and just bounce to and not listen to the words. He's not that artist. He's never been that artist. That ain't what you buy Nas's shit for. That's what this is about. Like, you're never going to buy a Nas project and ride to it the way you're going to ride to some of Jeezy's prime shit. It ain't built like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that, that was addressed, but, I mean, Hit-Boy kind of answered it like, you kind of have to basically do your job as a producer to be able to make the best material around, what he's coming forth with, because he's coming forth with some great concepts, and that's the incredible thing about Nas, too. He's a great concept writer, and if you're a producer that's into that, and into the scope of making a song, you should be invigorated by doing that. You can't just give him a beat. Y'all kind of got to build this thing together. And I think that's another thing with Nas, and like you said, just people feeling like he doesn't fit on the track. I think his process is more of I write the rhymes beforehand and then hear the tracks and try to put them together. Which I always thought that's kind of how Illmatic came together. And if it came together in that way, that's incredible. Because usually it's better to actually hear the track first and the writer be able to write around the track. You know what I mean?
No, I mean, so Mike, I think when they were like doing, it was like one of the many, many reviews like done on Illmatic talking about how it was made. Talking about a 17-year-old kid going in the booth. I think he said like he wrote New York State of Mind when he was like 15.
Right.
And he like went into the booth and like spit it over the track. And like when he got done, he was like, so how does that sound? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you talking about somebody that probably like book of rhyme upon book of rhyme upon, you know what I'm saying? because the ability to have like a book of rhymes, but to be able to pick it and then to go in there and be it like that's genius.
We never hear about this part of it. Not to interrupt you, but with that being said, did Nas pick the beats on Illmatic, or was this a collective effort from all the people who were on board, and maybe Large Professor kind of made final decision? Like, I've never heard of that part of it. Did Nas pick the beats?
Mike, I mean, Q-Tip is probably the best person to ask. I mean, you remember when he played that original version of Memory Lane that didn't make the album,
right?
Like the other Primo beat. That's actually a better beat, Mike. Like Beat the Beat, it's a better beat, but the fluidity with which Nas is flowing fit better on the other track, and so that makes me think that he had just more of a collective thread around him in general making those types of calls.
I think so too.
No, that shit is hard, but you sound like the greatest of MC of all time on this.
Because there was a lot of material that was cut too, and I've heard a lot of those songs, and whoever cut them, they made the right decisions. And not the fact that those songs weren't good, it's just that they weren't the best. And they, like you said, some of the stuff that we knock Nas for after the fact, or him not sounding whatever on a track, those were in existence on the cutting stuff, the stuff that was on the cutting room floor. Like Deja Vu comes to mind first off, and that's the
Dice Game, and I'm a Villain.
I love Dice Game. Dice Game's one verse, but Deja Vu's like 3 verses, and the track is cool, but it's nothing that
not better than One Time for Your Mind, which is the weakest song on Illmatic.
Exactly. And so I think it was a collective there, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's how, Thriller and things like that became so great, because you have a lot of different ears, a lot of different music people who are able to make great decisions. I don't want to go off on a tangent or anything, but to piggyback on that, I was looking at a Beehive interview, shout out to Beehive out there, and he was interviewing KP. And KP basically was talking about, and for people out there who don't know, KP was a member of PA, and PA came before Outkast. They were literally the first group that was produced by Organized Noise, and when they did their thing, that was the start of the hip hop sound in Atlanta in that way. And Organized needed their own group, so they went out and found Cass, right? But anyway, KP was still on with LaFace, kind of doing some A&R work. And basically, long story short, he basically said that, they knew Outkast was going to be something. These guys were young, they were spitting, and they just had it all. They were cool, they had the image. So when it came to Southern Playalistic, it was all hands on deck. So, and you can hear that in Southern Playalistic, and that's one of the reasons why I give Southern Playalistic so many props in relation to like an ATLians, because you could tell everybody had their hands in that, and it was an all hands on deck situation, kind of like an all eyes on me was.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Illmatic was too. When you look at the production staff there, they understood that this was a special moment. This guy was a vehicle, and it's all hands on deck.
I mean, Mike, a good majority of your greatest rap albums of all time are built out that way.
Yeah.
It's not just those. I mean, Mike, we can go to the Chronic. America's Most, Mike.
Yeah.
It Takes a Nation of Millions. Like, it be all hands on deck with it.
And you can hear it, too.
You can hear it, Mike. Mike, they all hands on deck on Soul Food, too. Like, it's like, oh, we on? Let's make sure we stay on. It's all hands on deck.
I had a conversation with Ray Murray some years ago from Organized Noise. And he told me to Get Up, Get Out was CeeLo's song. Because CeeLo was supposed to be solo, but they had the album coming out, and boom, you got the song. I don't have a deal yet, so boom, it's your song.
Mike, Gippin said countless times, I've written hit records that, you've never even heard, like, me on. Like, It's my idea, you know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, it'd be all hands on deck with those classic projects.
Especially back then, when you got somebody that's about to put on for the whole team, like Queensbridge, the whole city of Atlanta, It's like, yeah. And I think that's one of Ali's things too when it comes to this whole Nelly back and forth. They knew Nelly was the vehicle for St. Louis. And I don't know who wrote what, who did what, whatever. I'm not, saying anything to, insinuate any of that. But everybody knows that, like, look, this is our shot, so we're gonna put in the work we need to make sure that this individual is as successful as possible.
Oh, you're right.
And so, yeah, Illmatic was one of those moments. But the thing is, unfortunately, when that moment's gone, and then the artist comes with that sophomore effort, it's not the same. And you could tell there's something missing, but you can't really put your finger on it. You know what I mean? And then people start calling Nas a bad beat picker. Saying all that stuff to say, that's where that comes from.
No, I mean, Mike, if you actually just want to talk about bad beat picking, some of the beats on I Am are just bad. Dr. Knockboot is bad. You Won't See Me Tonight is bad. Like that, but it was written, no.
I didn't like, production-wise or beat-wise, I didn't love Favor for a Favor.
They could have done better.
Yeah.
Of the two artists coming together, but Mike, I still love Favor for a Favor.
I think it's a really good song. I mean, but it's like the beat. And I think the beat on the song with DMX, it just could have been better.
Mike, and this is another thing too. Even with Favor for a Favor, like Nas is first to so much stuff. You ever heard a New York dude rapping with Face before Favor for a Favor?
I'm gonna have to think about that. Did him and Jay collaborate yet? No, I don't think so.
The collaboration doesn't happen until 2 years after this.
Yeah. Well, no, Mike, Jay was on Untouchables, but yeah, it was, that was 2 years after, yeah.
Yeah. Mike, who the first New York nigga to rap with Dre again?
Yeah, it was Nas.
Yeah.
And even what he's doing right now with Hit-Boy, man, that is revolutionary, and hopefully, those type of collaborations will continue.
No, Mike, I want to hear KD3. That's how impressive this run is by them.
Okay, so you say the best beat on this album is Store Run. What would you say the best song is at this point?
It's either Store Run or Death Row East for me, or Nobody, between those three.
You really like Death Row East a lot.
Death Row East is a banger, Mike. Nas don't make bangers. That's where some of the beat picking stuff comes in too, is that, how about this? Death Row East, I mean, Mike, and I don't club anymore, but Death Row East would be the type of record that if I was getting up and getting ready to go out, I would throw it on when I was riding out to go out. Like, how many times can you say that about a Nas record? And here he is, like, pushing 50, making a record like that. And what's beautiful about the record is that he did it his way. It's a story, Mike.
And he's educating, or at least telling his side of the story.
And Mike, and it's one of the biggest like rap stories ever. On top of it, it's the beef with Tupac. It's
and like he's involved. You know what I mean? Like,
and he's directly involved. Like, he got his name shouted out on Machiavelli, and not in a nice way. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, so he's lending credence to all the gossip and rumors, but also clarifying and educating, like you're saying at the same time. And the shit slaps on top of that. It's
and I like that he started the album off with that too.
Mike, and it's crazy that they said that's the first record that they did. It's like, oh, that's the type of record that if that was the first record you made to start off, you like, let's go.
Yeah, you got to set the tone. And I think that, those type of records are important. And they set the tone and give you the momentum to be like you said, let's go.
But this is what I mean, is that it shows you that he's updated the formula. This is Nas being who he is on a track. The track is a modern track. Mm-hmm. But here's what Hit-Boy did. It kind of has a West Coast feel. He talking about Pac. So he wants the cats on the West to be able to ride to it too. Hit-Boy from the West. So he like, nah, like this Nas from Queensbridge talking about Pac. So it's got a little West Coast flavor to it. They're thinking, Mike.
I love the drums on Store Run too. I know we were just talking about the production of Store Run, and I think Store Run is a really dope song. Moments I liked a lot too.
So let's go to my favorite three records. You want to know what's great about them? The hooks are great, Mike.
Yeah.
Become a dope ass hook writer. Like the hook, the Death Row East, Store Run, and Nobody. Those are all top notch hooks. I
like Nobody a lot. I was listening to Nobody today, and I'm like, this is a really, really good song. Like, if we put together Nas' greatest hits, it's a possibility it could be on there.
Mike, all three of those records, I think, like, because I think his greatest hits would probably be a double disc now. I think all three of
Right.
those records should go on.
Yeah.
That is my actual feeling about it. Because for me, those three records alone, I mean, Mike, those three records are better than everything he's done the last 10 years. Everything. You can't find me nothing on Life is Good that's better than those three records.
P. White says that Eminem is a terrible beat picker. Yeah, he is. Terrible beat maker too.